Have you ever felt that something is deeply wrong, but everyone around you acts like everything is fine? That uncomfortable feeling in your chest when you see the news, when you observe how fast things are changing, when you notice patterns that others ignore. You are not alone. Thousands of people around the world share this exact sensation, but most are afraid to speak up because they do not want to be labeled as paranoid or negative. The truth is that the final warning has already been given, not through dramatic announcements or obvious catastrophes, but through silent patterns that repeat throughout history before every major collapse. The danger is real, the timeline is accelerating, and the window for preparation is closing faster than anyone wants to admit. Those who understand this are not pessimists, they are realists who refuse to live in comfortable denial. Right now, you have a choice. You can close this message and return to the illusion of normalcy, or you can stay and discover what millions are missing while there is still time to act. If you choose to stay alert and informed, then subscribe to the channel right now, because what comes next will change everything you thought you knew about the world we live in. The warning has already been delivered, yet most people continue living as if nothing has changed in their world. You see it everywhere. Families planning vacations, investors making long-term bets, governments issuing 30-year bonds as if the future is guaranteed and predictable. But deep inside, something feels off. That uncomfortable sensation in your stomach when you read certain headlines, when you notice how quickly things that were once stable are now crumbling. You feel it, but you push it away because facing it seems too overwhelming, too frightening, too disruptive to the life you are trying to build. Clear signs are accumulating at an accelerating pace, yet they are systematically ignored through collective psychological comfort mechanisms. Every generation believes it lives in normal times, even when standing at the edge of historic ruptures. The human brain is wired to normalize patterns, to find comfort in routine, to assume that tomorrow will resemble today. This survival mechanism once protected our ancestors from constant panic, but now it blinds us to genuine existential threats that require immediate recognition and action. We have become experts at explaining away the warning signs, at finding reasons why this time is different, why the patterns do not apply to us. Scripture speaks directly to this human tendency. 2 Peter 3 verse 3 says, "Knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lusts." This is not just ancient prophecy, it is a description of human psychology across all ages. When warnings arrive, the first response is not investigation but mockery. People laugh at those who point out danger because laughter is easier than preparation. Ridicule is simpler than change, and denial requires less energy than facing uncomfortable truth. Collective denial creates a powerful illusion of safety where genuine security no longer exists. When everyone around you acts normal, you assume everything must be fine. When media outlets continue their regular programming, when stores remain stocked, when systems appear functional, the mind concludes that all warnings must be exaggerated. But this is precisely how every major collapse unfolds. Gradually, then suddenly. The warning period always feels like false alarm until the moment it does not, and by then, the window for meaningful response has already closed. You are not crazy for feeling that something is fundamentally wrong with the trajectory of our world. You are not paranoid for noticing acceleration in events that once moved slowly. You are not a pessimist for recognizing patterns that have repeated throughout human history before every major transition. What you are experiencing is clarity breaking through the fog of collective denial, and that clarity is both a burden and a gift. It is a burden because you see what others refuse to acknowledge, but it is a gift because awareness creates the possibility of preparation. The final warning is not a single dramatic event that everyone will recognize simultaneously. It is a series of escalating signals that only those paying attention will connect into a coherent pattern. Each individual sign can be explained away, rationalized, or dismissed as coincidence. But when you step back and view the entire landscape, when you connect the dots across different domains, the picture becomes undeniable. The question is whether you will trust what you see or whether you will surrender to the comfort of collective blindness. Right now, you stand at a fork in the road. One path leads back into comfortable ignorance, where you can pretend everything is fine and hope for the best. The other path leads toward uncomfortable awareness, where you recognize the danger and begin preparing accordingly. Comment below which path you are choosing and what signs you have noticed that confirm the warning is real and urgent. The human mind possesses an extraordinary ability to distort reality rather than confront genuine risks that demand difficult responses. You have experienced this personally, perhaps without realizing it. Remember when you ignored that persistent pain until it became unbearable? When you avoided that difficult conversation until the relationship collapsed? When you postponed that financial decision until options disappeared? This same psychological mechanism operates on a collective scale, allowing entire societies to ignore existential threats until catastrophe becomes unavoidable and response becomes impossible. It is far easier to believe that everything is under control than to accept imminent chaos breaking through the surface. Your brain craves certainty, predictability, and the illusion of safety. Admitting that systems are failing, that institutions cannot protect you, that the future is fundamentally uncertain, creates unbearable psychological stress. So the mind develops defense mechanisms: rationalization, normalization, and selective attention. You focus on what feels manageable while filtering out information that threatens your sense of security. This is not stupidity or weakness, it is human nature operating exactly as designed. This self-deception is precisely what allows the threat to grow unchecked while people sleep peacefully at night. Every day that passes without visible catastrophe reinforces the belief that warnings are exaggerated, that concerned voices are alarmists, that everything will somehow work out. But growth patterns follow exponential curves, not linear progressions. What seems distant today can become overwhelming tomorrow, and the gap between comfortable and catastrophic can close faster than human perception can process or human systems can respond. Scripture warns about this exact tendency. 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 3 states, "For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." Notice the sequence. First comes the declaration of peace and safety, the collective agreement that everything is fine. Then comes sudden destruction, not gradual decline, but rapid collapse. The warning is clear across centuries. Comfort precedes catastrophe, and those who mistake temporary calm for permanent safety face the harshest awakening. You probably know people who refuse to discuss certain topics because they find them too disturbing or too negative. They change the subject when you mention concerning trends. They dismiss data that contradicts their worldview. They attack the messenger rather than address the message. This is not intellectual disagreement, it is psychological self-protection. Their minds cannot handle the implications of what you are saying, so they reject it reflexively without genuine consideration. Understanding this allows you to have compassion for their blindness while refusing to share in it. The most dangerous position is not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge that prevents further investigation. People who believe they understand the situation, who have absorbed mainstream narratives without critical examination, who trust that authorities have everything under control, these people are more vulnerable than those who admit they do not know. Because false certainty prevents preparation, while honest uncertainty motivates vigilance. The person who knows they do not know remains alert and adaptable, while the person who thinks they know everything sleeps deeply until crisis arrives. Right now, you face a choice between comfortable lies and uncomfortable truth. The lies tell you everything is fine, that systems are stable, that tomorrow will resemble today. The truth tells you that change is accelerating, that stability is illusion, that unprecedented challenges require unprecedented awareness. Like this video, if you choose truth over comfort, if you refuse to participate in collective denial, if you commit to facing reality regardless of how disturbing it becomes, recent events are not coincidence. They are patterns repeated throughout history. Before every major collapse and transformation, you have noticed them, even if you cannot articulate exactly what feels different. The frequency of disruptions increasing, the intensity of conflicts escalating, the stability of systems weakening. What once seemed solid now feels fragile. What once felt permanent now appears temporary. What once moved slowly now accelerates beyond control. These are not random fluctuations. They are warning signals that precede fundamental shifts in how civilization operates. Each new event reinforces that we are walking toward a critical point where old structures can no longer hold. Look at the pattern. Economic instability spreading across nations, political polarization reaching unprecedented levels, social cohesion fracturing along multiple fault lines, technological change outpacing human adaptation, environmental systems showing stress signals, supply chains revealing hidden vulnerabilities. Any single event can be explained away, but the convergence of multiple crises simultaneously points toward systemic breakdown rather than isolated problems with isolated solutions. Those who analyze context rather than just content perceive that the clock runs faster than most people think. You do not need special expertise to recognize acceleration, you only need honest observation. Compare the pace of change 5 years ago to today, then project that acceleration forward. What took decades now happens in years. What took years now happens in months. What took months now happens in weeks. This compression of timeframes means that windows for response close faster, that preparation requirements become more urgent, that the margin for error shrinks continuously. Scripture provides historical precedent for recognizing warning signs before crisis. Matthew 24 verse 32 teaches, "Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh." The message is clear. Observable signs precede major events, and those who pay attention can recognize approach before arrival. The signs are visible to anyone willing to look beyond surface appearances and connect patterns across different domains into coherent understanding. You have probably experienced the frustration of trying to explain these patterns to people who refuse to see them. They focus on individual trees while missing the forest. They explain away each sign separately without recognizing the collective picture. This is not because they lack intelligence, but because their psychological defenses prevent pattern recognition that would disturb their sense of security. Understanding this allows you to stop wasting energy trying to convince the unwilling, and instead focus on connecting with others who already sense that something fundamental is shifting. The challenge is not lack of information, but excess noise that obscures signal from background chaos. Every day brings thousands of data points, headlines, updates, and opinions competing for attention. Most people drown in information while starving for understanding, consuming content without extracting meaning, staying busy without gaining clarity. The skill that matters now is not gathering more information, but developing better filters. Not consuming more content, but recognizing which patterns actually matter versus which are merely distraction. Right now, the signs are multiplying faster than most people can process or integrate into coherent worldview. Those who recognize the acceleration feel both urgency and isolation, seeing clearly what others miss while struggling to communicate what they perceive. Comment below what specific signs you have noticed recently that confirm the critical point is approaching faster than mainstream narratives acknowledge or prepare for. The genuine risk is not what stands exposed in plain sight, but what operates silently beneath the surface of awareness. You feel this instinctively when something seems wrong, but you cannot identify exactly what or why. The visible threats distract attention, while invisible forces accumulate power, momentum, and irreversibility. By the time hidden dangers become obvious to everyone, the window for meaningful response has already closed, and options have narrowed to crisis management rather than prevention or mitigation. Forces in motion operate without the public perceiving their depth, complexity, or acceleration toward critical thresholds. Think about how systems work: the electrical grid, the financial system, the supply chain, the social contract. Most people never consider these foundations until they fail, and failure always seems sudden, even though stress accumulated gradually over years. The invisible danger is not a single threat, but interconnected vulnerabilities that cascade when one critical node breaks under pressure that appears manageable until it is not. When these forces finally become visible to mainstream awareness, it will be too late to react with anything beyond panic. You have seen this pattern repeatedly on smaller scales. The bank run that seems sudden but follows years of hidden instability, the social explosion that appears spontaneous but follows decades of accumulated tension, the supply shortage that shocks consumers but follows months of invisible logistics breakdown. The moment everyone recognizes the danger simultaneously is the moment when collective action becomes impossible because systems cannot handle the surge. Scripture speaks directly to this principle of hidden danger becoming suddenly visible. Luke 8 verse 17 declares, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad." What operates invisibly today will eventually surface into public awareness, but the timing matters enormously. Those who recognize hidden patterns early can prepare while options remain available, while those who wait for mainstream validation find themselves reacting from weakness rather than positioning from strength. You probably sense that official narratives do not capture the full picture of what is actually happening beneath surface appearances. The gap between what authorities say and what you observe creates cognitive dissonance that most people resolve by trusting authority over their own perception. But your instincts exist for a reason. Your pattern recognition evolved over millions of years to detect danger before it becomes obvious. Trusting that inner voice, that uncomfortable feeling, that sense that something is fundamentally wrong, is not paranoia, but survival wisdom. The invisible danger grows precisely because it remains invisible to most people most of the time. Like carbon monoxide that kills without warning because humans cannot detect it directly, systemic risks accumulate beyond perception until they reach critical mass. The question is not whether hidden dangers will eventually surface, but whether you will recognize them early enough to matter, whether you will trust pattern recognition over official reassurance, whether you will act on probability before certainty arrives too late. Right now, invisible forces are moving faster than visible events suggest to casual observers who mistake surface calm for genuine stability. The disconnect between what you sense and what others see creates isolation and self-doubt, making you question your own perception. Comment below. If you feel this disconnect, if you sense invisible dangers that others dismiss, if you struggle to trust your own pattern recognition against collective denial and official narratives. Societies prefer to mitigate fear by denying the existence of problems rather than confronting them with courage and preparation. You have witnessed this throughout your own life. the family that refuses to discuss the obvious addiction, the company that ignores declining performance until bankruptcy arrives, the community that pretends crime is not rising until violence touches them personally. This same pattern scales to entire civilizations that would rather maintain comfortable illusions than face uncomfortable realities that demand difficult choices and personal sacrifice. Apparent normalcy functions as emotional anesthesia that numbs populations to accumulating dangers, gathering strength beneath surface stability. When you wake up and the sun rises, when stores remain open, when electricity flows, when routine continues, the mind concludes that everything must be fine. This is how humans are wired, to trust patterns, to find comfort in repetition, to assume continuity. But this psychological mechanism becomes deadly when it prevents recognition of genuine discontinuity, when it mistakes the calm before the storm for permanent peace. This natural reaction ends up becoming the greatest threat of all, because it prevents the very preparations that could mitigate catastrophe. Think about it. If everyone recognized danger simultaneously and acted accordingly, systems would be overwhelmed by panic and breakdown would accelerate. But if no one recognizes danger until too late, then no preparation occurs and impact becomes maximum. The psychology of collective denial guarantees that most people will be caught completely unprepared when crisis finally breaks through into undeniable visibility. Scripture addresses this psychological trap with stark clarity. Proverbs 22 verse 3 states, "A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished." Notice the sequence. The prudent see danger coming and take protective action, while the simple continue forward into harm because they either do not see or refuse to believe what they see. This is not about intelligence, but about willingness to face uncomfortable truth and act on it, despite social pressure to conform to collective denial. You have probably felt the social pressure to stop being negative, to stop worrying, to stop talking about problems that make others uncomfortable. Friends and family tell you to relax, to enjoy life, to stop being paranoid. But this pressure is not concern for your well-being. It is their own discomfort projected onto you. Your awareness threatens their denial. Your preparation exposes their vulnerability. Your questions undermine their false sense of security. Understanding this allows you to maintain conviction despite social pressure to surrender awareness for acceptance. The most dangerous aspect of collective denial is that it creates its own validation through circular reasoning that blocks external evidence. When everyone around you denies danger, their collective denial becomes evidence that you must be wrong. When authorities assure safety, their assurances confirm the denial. When systems continue functioning, their function proves the denial was justified. This creates a self-reinforcing loop where denial strengthens itself until reality breaks through with force that denial can no longer contain or explain away. Right now, you stand outside collective denial, able to see what others refuse to acknowledge, carrying burden of awareness that isolates you from comfortable majority. This position is lonely, but it is also privileged because clarity enables preparation, while blindness guarantees victimhood. Comment below how you handle the social pressure to abandon awareness and rejoin collective denial, and what strategies help you maintain conviction despite isolation from mainstream consensus. The impact will not be isolated to specific regions or sectors, but will be global, systemic, and irreversible once critical thresholds are crossed. You cannot protect yourself through geographic relocation alone, because interconnected systems mean that breakdown in one area cascades through entire networks. Financial contagion spreads across borders in hours. Supply chain disruptions ripple through continents in days. Social instability transmits through digital networks in minutes. The illusion of safety through distance or wealth or position evaporates when systemic collapse arrives because no one stands outside systems that encompass everyone. Social structures are not prepared for what is coming because they were designed for stability and incremental change, not for rapid disruption. Think about the institutions you rely on. Healthcare systems operating at capacity with no surge capability, food distribution networks running just in time with no buffer inventory, emergency services stretched thin during normal operations, political systems paralyzed by division and unable to coordinate response. These structures cannot handle the stress that is building, and their failure will not be graceful degradation, but sudden collapse that catches populations completely unprepared. Each day that passes without recognition and preparation increases the cost of future response exponentially rather than linearly. This is the mathematics of crisis. Early action is cheap, delayed action is expensive, too late action is impossible. You have seen this in your personal life, when small problems become huge because you ignored them, when preventable disasters became inevitable because you postponed response. The same principle applies to civilizations. The longer collective denial continues, the narrower options become, the higher costs rise, the worse outcomes get. Scripture warns about the escalating cost of ignored warnings through vivid imagery. Amos 4 verse 12 says, "Therefore thus will I do unto thee, O Israel, and because I will do this unto thee, prepare to meet thy God, O Israel." The message is not subtle. When warnings are ignored repeatedly, when opportunities for correction are squandered, when the window for gentle adjustment closes, then confrontation with reality becomes harsh and unavoidable. Preparation is not optional for those who understand this principle. It is the only rational response to visible trajectory. You have probably calculated in quiet moments what collapse would mean for your family, your community, your way of life. These thoughts are disturbing, so most people push them away and return to comfortable distraction. But avoiding the thought does not prevent the outcome. It only ensures you face it unprepared. The people who think through scenarios, who develop contingency plans, who build resilience before crisis, these people do not suffer less when disruption arrives, but they suffer differently because they retain agency and options that the unprepared lose immediately. The consequences of ignoring the last warning extend beyond physical survival to psychological and spiritual dimensions that most people never consider. When reality finally breaks through denial, when everything you believed was stable proves fragile, when institutions you trusted reveal their weakness, the psychological shock can be as devastating as physical hardship. People who never prepared mentally or spiritually for discontinuity face not just material loss, but identity collapse, meaning crisis, and spiritual despair that can be more destructive than external circumstances. Right now, the cost of preparation is low, but rising daily as more people wake up and compete for limited resources, skills, and positioning. The cost of ignoring warnings appears zero today, but compounds silently until it becomes total tomorrow. Comment below what preparations you have made or are considering, and what obstacles prevent more people from taking basic steps while time and options still remain available for those willing to act. Changes that previously required decades now unfold in months as acceleration becomes the defining characteristic of our era. You have noticed this in your own lifetime. Technology that seemed like science fiction 5 years ago is now mundane. Social changes that would have taken generations now happen in years. Political shifts that were unthinkable yesterday become reality today. This compression of time between cause and effect, between warning and consequence, between stability and disruption, means that the old assumption of gradual change no longer applies to anything. The pace of events reveals that something larger is approaching, some convergence point where multiple trends intersect simultaneously. Think about exponential curves. They appear flat and manageable for extended periods, then suddenly go vertical in ways that shock observers who were tracking linear projections. We are living through the transition from the flat part to the vertical part, and most people have not adjusted their expectations or preparations to match the actual velocity of change now governing their reality. Those who pay attention perceive that there is no more space for delays, postponements, or assumptions about tomorrow. You feel the urgency even if you cannot articulate exactly why or precisely when critical thresholds will be crossed. This sense of compressed time is not anxiety disorder or paranoia. It is accurate perception of accelerating dynamics that most people filter out because accepting acceleration means abandoning comfortable assumptions about having time to prepare later when things become clearer or more certain. Scripture speaks to this acceleration of events in the context of prophetic fulfillment. Matthew 24, verse 22 warns, "And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened." The implication is clear. The timeline compresses, events accelerate, and what might have unfolded gradually instead happens rapidly. Understanding this removes false comfort in assumptions about having unlimited time to prepare, adjust, or respond to visible trajectories. You have probably experienced the disorientation of trying to keep up with developments that outpace your ability to process them fully. News breaks faster than analysis can form. Situations evolve faster than understanding can develop. Crises emerge faster than responses can be organized. This creates permanent cognitive lag, where your mental model of reality is always outdated by the time you finish updating it. The only solution is to focus on principles and patterns rather than specific predictions, on building adaptability rather than perfect plans. The acceleration of timeline means that windows for action close faster than most people recognize until after they have already passed. You have seen this repeatedly. The moment to buy supplies before shortages was months ago. The time to relocate before real estate prices spiked was years ago. The opportunity to build community before crisis was last decade. But dwelling on missed opportunities wastes the limited time remaining. The question now is, what can still be done with whatever window remains open for those acting today, rather than waiting for tomorrow? Right now, you stand at a point where acceleration is visible to anyone paying attention, but still denied by mainstream narratives invested in continuity assumptions. The gap between actual pace and perceived pace creates opportunity for those who trust their own observation over official reassurance. Comment below what evidence of acceleration you have witnessed personally that confirms the timeline is compressing faster than most people understand or prepare for in their planning and expectations. Collective understanding will arrive, but only after the breaking point when reversal becomes impossible and damage becomes permanent. You have seen this pattern on smaller scales. The moment when everyone realizes simultaneously that the emperor has no clothes, that the system is broken, that the promises were lies. That moment of collective awakening does not bring solutions. It brings panic because recognition arrives precisely when options have disappeared, and the only remaining choice is how to manage collapse rather than whether to prevent it. When realization hits mainstream consciousness, there will not be sufficient structure to contain the impact of millions acting simultaneously. Think about what happens when crowds panic. Stampedes at exits, runs on banks, hoarding of supplies, breakdown of social cooperation. Now scale that to entire populations, recognizing existential threat at the same moment. The systems designed for orderly function cannot handle the chaos of mass panic, and their failure accelerates the very catastrophe that triggered the panic in a self-reinforcing cycle. The question is not if this will happen, but when each person will wake up to reality that a few already see clearly. You are reading this because you are among the early ones, the canaries in the coal mine who sense danger before it becomes obvious. This position carries both advantage and burden. Advantage because you can prepare while others sleep. Burden because you see what is coming and cannot stop it, cannot convince most people, cannot do anything except prepare yourself and those few willing to listen. Scripture describes this moment of too late realization with devastating clarity. Proverbs 1 verse 26 states, "I also will laugh at your calamity, I will mock when your fear cometh." This seems harsh until you understand the context. Repeated warnings ignored, multiple opportunities for correction squandered, deliberate choice of comfort over wisdom. The moment of realization comes not as rescue but as judgment, not as new beginning, but as end of the road where all previous choices converge into inescapable consequence. You have probably imagined what that moment will look like when everyone wakes up simultaneously. The panic in faces, the desperation in voices, the anger at those who failed to warn them, even though warnings were given repeatedly. The tragedy is not that people did not know, it is that they chose not to know, that they attacked those who tried to warn them, that they prioritized comfort over truth until comfort was no longer available and truth became undeniable through direct experience. The gap between early awareness and mass realization creates a window that closes daily as more people wake up and begin competing for limited resources. Those who act early secure what they need while abundance remains. Those who wait find themselves competing with crowds for scraps. This is not hoarding or selfishness, it is rational response to visible trajectory. Preparing yourself and your family is not taking from others. It is refusing to become burden on systems that will collapse under demand they cannot meet. Right now, you have time that others do not realize they need, awareness that others lack, and opportunity that others will not recognize until after it passes. This is not luck, but the result of choosing discomfort over denial, choosing preparation over procrastination, choosing to see what others refuse to acknowledge. Subscribe to the channel right now to stay ahead of the curve, to maintain clarity as chaos increases, and to connect with others who understand that the final warning has been given and the countdown has already begun, regardless of whether mainstream acknowledges it.